How do you see it?
Well, I admire the students enormously. Admire their sentiments and their courage. I frankly am very disappointed in the administration. I think it's very short-sighted for them not, at the very, very least. I mean, I think they should be considering divestment more seriously. If they saw themselves in history, they would be thinking about South Africa and how clearly it was a good thing. History has judged it to be a good thing to divest from a white supremacist state. The slaughter in Gaza certainly stacks up pretty well against the white supremacy of South Africa.
I find it fascinating when professors, teachers, individuals with credentials who got degrees, were educated, have zero clue about Israeli and Palestinian history. And we're not talking old ancient history. We're talking 135, 40 years max. You go from 1880 to today. Now, okay, so 144 years. Pardon me, mathematics is not my expertise. But then I am willing to admit when I'm at fault. This dude, he's like comparing South African history to that of Israeli history. Okay, let's go there then. The Dutch, they come from Holland, Europe. They leave their country because they're interested in seeing what's out there. They come to a foreign land, now called South Africa. They colonize this land. They then set up a system in which they, the whites, colonize the blacks and create an oppressive system called apartheid, exclusive to that region of the world, although one could argue the same happened in other histories such as in Australia and the Americas here in Canada. Okay, you've got that history. Then speed up, obviously, in the mid-90s, Nelson Mandela, after serving nearly 3 decades in prison, locked up by, yes, the apartheid oppressors, the whites, he comes out, and because he's such a noble individual who can practice self-restraint, he says, you know what? Let's make peace. And you know, I've criticized South Africa before, but even though they've got a lot of problems and need to fix a lot of things, just like many and probably most countries on the planet, they did all right, especially from the mid-90s on when Mandela was the leader of the country. And it's really unfortunate that things have gone downhill. Let's compare that to Israeli history, shall we? In the early 1900s and even prior, about 1890s, you had a movement, a progressive movement that lasted about 30, 40 years, through also the 1940s and the end of World War II and the Nazi regime. A movement of a group of individuals called Jews to repopulate their indigenous homeland, indigenous for thousands and thousands of years. And that's entirely different to start. Next, you have what happened as a result of a proposal to divide land, not colonize further, not create an apartheid system, to divide a space so different distinct peoples, those who are Arab Palestinians and those who are Jewish Israelis, would be able to coexist but have their own separate sovereign nations. We know what happened. The Arabs refused. The Jews said, we'll take whatever we can freaking get because 6 million of our people have just been gassed and shot to death. And when you lose a war after 10 months, which is exactly what happened with the Arab Palestinians, guess what? You don't get to keep the land. And so that pretty much sums that one up. But I guess after 76 years, it's not enough to just be diplomatic and negotiate and find a Nelson Mandela within your people. No, you get a Yasser Arafat or an Ismail Haniyeh to do your bidding. And what they end up doing, actually, in the end, is just enriching themselves and becoming billionaires who now sit on their freaking couches in Doha, Qatar, sipping their lattes.